Court Watch with Alex Sawyer, and I'm excited to bring you the latest episode of my podcast where I am joined by Michael Cargill, owner of Central Texas Gunworks. He had his case before the justices this week where they heard arguments challenging the ban on bump stocks. Before we talk to Michael, I want to let the audience know about major developments with President Trump's immunity case, which the justices said they will hear in April. That dispute will decide if Trump is entitled to presidential immunity over federal charges he faces related to his challenge of the 2020 election results. A decision is expected by the end of June, but for now the trial is on hold while the High Court weighs the immunity issue. In other court news, the justices appeared sympathetic to arguments against the state of Florida and Texas over laws restricting social media platforms. A group advocating on behalf of the tech platforms claimed the laws violated the First Amendment in a case heard at the end of February. The laws were aimed at curtailing censorship of political candidates and other information due to alleged conservative bias in big tech. But the justices appeared concerned about allowing the government to step in and police private tech companies, pointing out that many of the platforms have their own rules they try to follow to moderate speech. A decision in the social media case is expected by the end of June when the court wraps up its term. The justices, though, also heard from Michael's lawyers recently, who argued the federal government ran afoul of the Administrative Procedures Act in implementing a ban on bump stocks. The government has pointed to a decades-old law banning machine guns to ban bump stocks. The move came in the wake of the 2017 mass shooting in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the gunman used a bump stock to kill 60 people. Everyone had until March of 2019 to hand them over. Bump stocks are not firearms themselves, but they allow semi-automatic weapons to fire at high speed. The feds say Congress intended to ban these types of devices. But Michael and his lawyers say a decades-old law can't apply to a firearms device that wasn't even in existence at the time the law was passed. Thanks so much for taking time to join my podcast. Let's start with you telling me and the listeners about why you decided to launch this legal challenge after turning over your bump stocks as required, I guess, under the current ATF rule.
Yes, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate this. Back in 2018, or actually really 2017, when they had the shooting in Las Vegas, allegedly a guy used a bump stock to commit that heinous crime. And my thoughts and prayers go out to the families that are even today still suffering because of that. But that was the only time that a bump stock had been used in a crime, and it was the worst mass shooting in the history of this nation. So the Trump administration at the time decided they were going to put pressure on either Congress or the ATF to actually ban bump stocks, since the bump stock was allegedly used. And I thought that was actually crazy, banning a tool that someone used, and it's the only time it's ever been used. And I had some of them, I had a bunch of them, and I know other people had them. Matter of fact, 500,000 bump stocks were sold in this country. And to turn around all of a sudden because one person did something bad, we're going to ban, 499,000 of them, 999 of them, we're going to ban them in the entire country, I thought was just insane. So I definitely wanted to do something. I said, we got to do something. And at the time, nobody wanted to fight the administration because it was Trump.
Right.
Saying, hey, we're going to ban this. We're going to get rid of them. Even the NRA was on board, the National Rifle Association. And I said, that I can't stand for this. So I said, I'll go in it on my own and do what I have to do because I purchased something legally. And I don't think it's right for an agency within the federal government to decide they're going to come and ban it and turn it into a felon overnight.
Right. And that's one of the things that I think when we spoke previously about your case, you had mentioned the idea that what really bothers you is the feds coming in with basically like a decades-old law trying to apply it to bump stocks, and that if they're going to ban something, they need to do it the right way, right? Is that kind of, I think from our previous conversation, that's what you were getting into.
Right. In order for you to do something like this, you're going to have to go through Congress. Someone in Congress writes a bill. It goes to both houses of Congress. They vote on it. They pass it. It goes to the president. The president signs it, and that's how a bill becomes law. Not because an agency, a rogue agency, decides to do something on their own and turn millions of Americans into felons. That's not how our laws are made in this country.
Let me ask you, I know you were here in D.C. for the arguments this past, I believe it was Wednesday, the court heard your case. What was it like being inside the courtroom? What was that experience like? I mean, not very many people have that opportunity.
It was very moving to be in the United States Supreme Court in Washington, D.C., to be in that room to look around and the color of the room, red, with the white pillars, to see the justices sitting on the dais there, it was very moving. And just the procedure, how everything, how it all played out and how things happened, it was very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
And I was very overwhelmed, with joy that I've made it this far.
Right.
Fighting for something that I believe in, and now I'm in the high of the land.
Uh-huh. Let me ask you, during arguments, there seemed to be a little bit of confusion from some of the justices about like the difference between a bump stock and a machine gun, right? Was that kind of something that you kept hearing?
Correct.
Like,
for an
ahead.
hour and
Yeah.
a half, I think the entire thing was all about what the function of a trigger was.
Yes,
and,
I think
and,
it was. They seemed a bit confused. I remember the Chief Justice was like, "Well, then what's the other non-trigger hand doing?" It was, yeah, I remember it was. There was a little bit of confusion there.
Yeah, and I want to remind people the definition. Here's the definition that we're talking about. It's any weapon which shoots, and we're talking about the definition of machine gun. Any weapon which shoots or is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manual reloading
Right.
by single function of the trigger. And so
yeah,
the thing
go
that
ahead.
they were getting stuck on is automatically, and they're getting stuck on one shot and getting stuck on manual and also function of the trigger.
Right.
Yeah, it's a very detailed description.
Right. And the bump stock, correct me if I'm not describing this correctly, but I think it was your lawyer explained that the trigger has to be pulled each time, right?
Right. Each time you have to press the trigger in order for it to fire. The trigger's got to reset. It's not a situation where you're holding the trigger. There's no reset and more than one round goes out. That's a machine gun.
Mm-hmm.
Each time with the bump stock, you're still pressing that trigger, and the trigger is resetting. That is a semi-automatic by the definition of what the government has written.
When I left the arguments, what I stood out to me was I did think that there was an ideological divide from the justices. I thought that the more conservative wing of the court was uncomfortable with the idea, kind of what we were talking about previously, like a 1930s statute applying to something that wasn't even in existence at the time Congress passed it. What was your take? What did you have any sort of feeling when you left, like one way or the other, based on the questioning?
I thought the government opened themselves up to, a very dangerous trend there. I think the government would basically, if you listen to the government's attorney, what they're saying is their definition of machine gun would be a modern energy gun or a laser gun. So I take a laser gun because I pull the trigger, that laser goes out. That's a machine gun in the definition of what, the government was saying. So currently right now, when we come out with laser guns, they're machine guns and they're prohibited under the definition.
Mm-hmm. If you were to win this case, do you think that would you and others get their bump stocks back, or what is it? What do you expect the government to do? Just stay away?
So this is going to be the most frustrating thing for Texas, Louisiana, and Mississippi, because I won this case in the Fifth Circuit for Texas, Louisiana, and the state of Mississippi. We're now in the Supreme Court. If the Supreme Court decides this case for me, I'm still going to, in my favor, I will still have to go back down to the lower court because the lower court judge has decided to flip off, pretty much the Fifth Circuit and say, okay, fine, he won, but I'm not going to give him any relief. So I'm not going to tell you what he won.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you if he gets his bump stocks back. I'm not going to tell you if everyone gets their bump stocks back. He didn't provide any relief whatsoever. And so we have to go back and fight that in that lower court and make our way back up again, if
Mm-hmm.
he is adamant on not giving me relief.
Interesting. Well, I will keep in touch with you. Thank you so much for your time. And then, of course, I would love to have you back to react once we do get a ruling.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
A decision in Michael's case is expected by the end of June. Later this month, the justices will grapple with another social media challenge to the feds allegedly colluding with big tech to censor posts about the COVID-19 pandemic in the 2020 election. They'll also take up a challenge to the FDA's relaxed standards for the abortion pill. I'll have more on those challenges during the next episode. Thanks for tuning into my podcast, Court Watch. If you have not subscribed yet, please do so, and also feel free to email me interesting questions or topics you want explored about the legal reporting world. I'll do my best to answer them during each episode. Thanks for listening, and I look forward to hearing from you all soon. Listen to my podcast, Court Watch, at WashingtonTimes.com or wherever you get your favorite podcasts.